I'm a big fan of amateur manga and comics. There's a visceral sort of connection with the author you don't really get with clean-cut professional work, where it's just one person or a small team working for no pay and often not even for attention. People uploading their ideas without any fear of supervisors to please, deadlines to meet, or fan expectations to uphold. Just getting their story out there the way they want it. As great as vagabond panels look, and as lost as you can get in a berserk spread, there's really something special about when something that normally looks like this suddenly pops off and explodes into something you would never have expected. The fact that it doesn't normally look that good makes the moments where it does stand out and that much more special. Consistently professional work just doesn't quite hit the same. I like getting to see someone building their dream from genuinely nothing, scraping together whatever they can with the abilities they have. Even when it's not good, you can still genuinely appreciate that they tried. But I'm not talking about one of the ones I appreciate today. Today I'm talking about a series so bad, so generally vile in tone and message, that it actually might be the only piece of fictional media I consider dangerous. You know those parents who said GTA would turn their kids into killers and that video games were killing kids who thought they would just respawn like in Call of Duty? People afraid that those creepypasta stories online were telling their kids to kill small animals? Well, imagine for a second a real version of that. A story that genuinely seems to try its very best to convince its reader that outright murder of anyone who messes with you is not just justified, but is justice itself. That if someone pushes you over the edge, you should do absolutely whatever you can to kill them in front of their family as painfully as possible, no matter the cost, because it is the right thing to do. This is Rooftop Swordmaster, a manhwa series that seems like it is intentionally made to inspire school shooters. Rooftop Swordmaster is an online webcomic, more specifically a manhwa, which is basically to Korea as manga is to Japan. One of the biggest differences is that rather than a 2-page spread like most manga or comics are presented in, most manhwa, especially ones uploaded to webtoons or online, are made from continuing top-to-bottom format, easily scrollable on phone screens, usually with a focus on large singular panels rather than pages of panels. I'm gonna start off by talking about the visuals, because it's probably what most people are reacting to immediately. Rooftop Swordmaster is, at least in terms of amateur webcomics, pretty fucking good looking. There are some extremely iffy moments, but it has a unique style compared to most manhwa that actually fits its more brutal themes and stories. It can genuinely look quite good at times. It does often use some tricks people may consider cheap or even cheating, as a lot of its backgrounds are just 3D renders with characters drawn on top. Hell, even the fucking sword is a 3D render at all times, always just positioned in place with characters drawn around it. Now that really bothers me, and considering it's mostly just one guy baking this thing for free online, I don't see any problem with him cutting corners like this. But I know if I didn't mention it, everyone else would. Rooftop Swordmaster isn't the biggest manhwa webtoon by a long shot, but it was big enough to get a full translation, even one of those shitty bootleg manga sites for it. You know the ones. Google any series manga and you'll probably immediately get a link to some site that continually tries to barrage you with hentai pop-ups. According to its page on Mangakalot, it's gotten over 48 million views over its 100-chapter run, which is pretty fucking substantial. It's at about a 4.7 out of 5 rating with about 10,000 votes. Now I don't know exactly how trustworthy these metrics are. After all, this is a site of dubious legality that hosts just about any manga you could think of. So just for comparison, One Piece has about 230 million views and basically a perfect 5 out of 5 rating from around 32,000 votes on the same site. Hopefully that can give you somewhat of an idea of how popular this thing was. You know, it was big, it wasn't the biggest thing you've ever heard of. The story starts with a boy who has clearly been brutally injured being rushed to a hospital. Over a police radio, we learn that the suspects are 8 middle schoolers. The cops point out, quite fairly, that this goes far beyond regular bullying. The kid's almost dead and barely hanging on. Realizing this is gonna become big news, they plan to move quickly and take the suspects in before word spreads to the media. We're taken to the boy waking up as his aunt calls out for him. We also learn the protagonist's name, Tak Se-young. We also learn that he's been in a coma for 9 months. His aunt begins catching him up on what's been happening. Tak Se-young was beaten to near death by a group of 8 students, and was expected never to wake up. Despite this, all they got was a suspension from school, and his parents were told to settle for a few tens of thousands of dollars rather than pursue it further in court. The reason for this is that these 8 kids who beat up Se-young were a clique of rich kids, whose parents consist of everything from politicians to CEOs to government agents to even people involved with cartel activity. Basically, a super troupe of social, political, and financial influence that could make any problem they desire disappear. Se-young's parents were outraged, refusing the settlement and doing everything they could to get justice, to see those responsible punished no matter what. But everything they posted online was taken down near instantly. The media wouldn't report anything they were doing, even the police wouldn't help, because anyone who tried to help them in any way either either got fired or transferred. So with their son in a coma, presumed to never wake up, and the people responsible getting away scot-free, they decided to do something drastic. They went in front of the Gyeongbokgung Palace, with signs for their cause, and lit themselves on fire. With that, the floodgates opened. Too much media coverage, too many uploads from cell phones, too much outrage to silence. With Se-young's parents dead, the world finally cared enough to push back and demand justice. Now, for a moment, let's ignore how absolutely fucked up it is that the first thing his aunt is telling him the moment he wakes up from his 9-month coma is, this. So far, this is actually a pretty good story that seems like it has something interesting to say about social influence and the ridiculous cost it can take for society to actually demand change. And to me, this is what hurts the most about this series. It has an incredibly strong opening that doesn't quite end here, by the way. It keeps going for a few good chapters and then it just becomes the worst goddamn thing I've ever seen. Getting back to the story, all 8 of the students involved in the beating were ultimately sentenced to 2 years of juvenile detention, and just about all of the adults involved were outright fired. The parents held a press conference where they apologized to the entire country. The president of South Korea even visited Se-young while he was in the coma. That's how much of an outrage the whole country was in. There's a strong moment here where the story is building up everything the parents' deaths caused, the huge society-shaking movement that followed, and after all of it, Se-young's face. The clear look of indifference, of dissatisfaction with no words is so fucking good. He doesn't need to say anything. You understand immediately what it conveys. So what? He doesn't feel at all like justice has been served. We skip forward about a year, and Se-young's trauma has led him to becoming the worst thing imaginable. A landlord. His aunt gives him a property that he rents out to make money, and he lives in the rooftop room. Basically the reverse of a basement dweller, Se-young is now a shut-in roof dweller who seems to spend all his time online searching up the families of his bullies, finding out everything he can about their companies and lives. He's interrupted when he's visited by this woman who seems to come by to make regular health checkups for whatever reason. She tries to tell him that he's gotta get over what happened, go outside and start living again. Apparently Se-young hasn't even gone back to school since getting out of the hospital. We see Se-young hacking into some messaging app and learn that the bullies are supposed to be in juvenile detention, but were actually just sent abroad on secret vacations. Meaning, despite everything, they hadn't seen any sort of justice. Then the plot device happens. A giant sword falls from outer space onto the rooftop. The next few chapters are spent basically wasting time with Se-young coming to terms with the giant sword on his roof, which has also been sort of speaking to him through visions of its previous wielder in some sort of ancient war with monsters. Finally, he goes to pull it out and seems to be flooded with visions of a past life before passing out. When he wakes up, he struggles to wield the massive fucking sword with his little neat arms, but the knowledge of how to use it is suddenly in his brain, and he has become a Rooftop Swordmaster. Almost. Se-young fucks himself up pretty bad training with his new sword, and the girl from earlier comes back to fix him up. She's apparently his personal nurse from when he was in a coma and has been keeping up with him to make sure he's okay. Again, there's a really good emotional moment where he has to cover up his injuries and screams by saying he was having a breakdown. It's actually done really well. Fucking savor it, because it's gonna be one of the last times in this 100-chapter long series any character has any personality or depth. We then get a My Hero Academia style training arc where Se-young is training himself up to use the sword, taking the trash out, and without realizing it, cleaning his whole life up. Again, it's really well done. They even say it's better than the Deku training arc. There's no All Might standing behind him the whole time, telling him to keep going. The sword sometimes speaks, but it's very rare and usually nothing substantial. There's no super-powered reward in sight at the end of it. Se-young is training himself for himself, bettering himself to be a better him, not because his role model is there telling him he can do it, not because he has to toughen up his body for some superpower, but just because he wants to swing that fucking sword. And also for revenge so he can kill all his bullies, but we don't quite know that yet. The nurse comes back to tell him he's officially past the recovery period and tell him that she won't be coming for checkups anymore, and also to admire his gains. Then Se-young trains for another full year, and we have officially entered the end of anything good Rooftop Swordmaster has to offer. From here on forward, just about every single thing that happens in the story is just fucking horrid to the core. I want to take another moment to pause here. I feel like I might have accidentally set some incorrect expectations of what Rooftop Swordmaster is like with my earlier statements. When I say it might be the only fictional series I genuinely consider dangerous, I don't mean because it's so overly edgy or violent or gory. I love violence, even when it's just for the sake of violence. I love how dark and gory Berserk gets. I love how stupidly edgy a turn of Jujutsu Kaisen can be. I even love violence with no deeper point or meaning, like Madness Combat, John Wick, or the Raid movies. I love violence so much that I actively avoid pretty much any series that doesn't actively have violence in it. Rooftop Swordmaster is not the edgiest series I've ever read, nor is it the goriest or the most senselessly violent. The problem with the Rooftop Swordmaster is not that it goes too far, it's that it portrays itself and its main character as being not just justified, but justice itself when they are committing horrible acts of mass murder, and will twist the world around itself to try and make him justified for anything he does, no matter what. Rooftop Swordmaster does not want you for a fucking second to doubt Sejong. It doesn't for a second want you to stop cheering him on and believing with all your heart that he is a hero the whole world needs. One of the bully's parents gives some big villain speech as he's running for president and calls up another bully parent to talk about meeting up with their kids. Another thing you'll notice pretty quickly is that the bully's parents are almost like extensions of themselves. Like, all their parents live for is purely to get as much power as they can so that their kid can never be in trouble and do whatever they want. They talk about what a hard time their kids must have had on their secret vacation and want to celebrate them finally coming back to Korea. And then he does the most on-the-nose Power Rangers villain laugh of all time. It's also something that it's gonna happen once a chapter pretty much. Finally, we're properly introduced to our bullies. Junhyuk, Yoojin, Suhyo, Haeyeon, Dahan, Changsu, Suhyun, and Sujung. I fucking hope I did those right. They form up like the fucking Legion of Doom to plan how they'll get back at this kid they put in a coma, because apparently the only thing all 8 of these kids have spent the past 2 years of their secret vacations doing was planning how to fuck with him, and literally making connections with the fucking Yakuza to do so. Like, Junhyuk's face morphs into a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! Evil possession spirit just to show you how evil he is. This is something else you're gonna know is happening a lot now. Characters being so ridiculously over the top evil and absolutely obsessed with Sejong. Sejong has a good reason to hate them, but the author doesn't seem to realize that they really have no good reason to be this fucking obsessed with some kid they beat the shit out of 2 goddamn years ago. His parents burning themselves to death to send them on temporary vacation does not constitute anything close to a decent motive for these high schoolers to form up a death squad and send literal fucking hitmen to his house. Changsu and Junhyuk, by the way, don't feel bad if you don't remember the names. Every single one of these 8 bullies act exactly the same and serve the exact same purpose. The only difference between them is how powerful their parents are. Seriously, their parents are like their fucking stands. They exist purely to give these kids the ability to do whatever they want and form a hierarchy of power levels. Anyway, Changsu and Junhyuk look over aerial photos they've taken of Sejong's house, talk about all the research they've done into his personal life, and then plan to send some gangsters in to drag him out of his house and kidnap him for them. Oh, by the way, this is just their plan. Apparently Soo-hyun has her entire own next level plan for Sejong. Let me remind you of the relationship here. These 8 kids beat Sejong to near death. Sejong's parents burned themselves to death in protest. The 8 of them got sent on a secret 2-year vacation to avoid juvie while Sejong is in a coma. The moment their fake sentence ends, they begin pairing up, each with their own independent plans to come back for round 2 on this random kid who they've already nearly killed and ruined the life of. I told you, all actual characterization is done at this point. Everyone is now just a fucking Power Rangers villain who has absolutely nothing better to do than send every single resource they have after some 17-year-old they barely know for next to no reason other than to be a dickhead. Oh, by the way, Soo-hyun and Soo-jung spent their vacation in Japan and joined the Yakuza, of course by making friends whose parents were in the Yakuza, because as we've established, parents in this world are literally just stands for teenagers to summon whenever they need some other kid taken out. Soo-hyun gets a text about how the other 2 bullies are moving in to catch Sejong first, and obviously they're outraged because the only fucking thing that matters in any of these kids' lives is Sejong for some reason. Like, every single one of them thinks they're the Joker to his Batman. But Sejong is still just some random kid they knew in middle school at this point. If Sejong died, I genuinely think they would all cry and curl up because they wouldn't know what to fucking do with their lives anymore. A pair of mobsters show up and get the shit beat out of them off-screen by Sejong. Changsu calls his dad to give him a stern talking to because his gangsters haven't kidnapped a 17-year-old I don't like. And since he exists purely as his son's power level, he sends even more gangsters who also get one-shotted by Sejong, who has become the fucking Incredible Hulk. Like, holy shit, look at this! If there's one thing I want to give this series credit for, after its intro chapters, which were very fucking good, I'll give it credit that I did not expect the MC to turn into this. There's something incredibly unique and frightening about making your character, you know, look as strong as they feel, rather than being skinny anime twink who can swing a 500-pound sword because shut up. So the police show up and damn near shoot Sejong out of pure fear, and then start carting off all the bodies while Changsu's dad is like, what the hell, jinkies? And the police are told to withdraw because Se-young is still 17, and therefore a minor, and the police chief is afraid of another media shitstorm from the somewhat famous Tak Se-young. Se-young has a call with his aunt where he lies and says he wants to travel the country for a year to cover up the revenge murder rampage is about to go on, which, you know, she's definitely not gonna see that on the news or anything. The bullies have another call where they're pissed because their goons still haven't kidnapped Se-young for them to torture. Because again, the only thing that seems to give meaning to the lives of any other characters in the series is fucking with Se-young. Since their plan failed and is taking too long, it's Soo-hyun's turn. He's the Yakuza bully who hangs out with the president's daughter bully. So they're basically the top power level, you know, they're fucking Frieza, I don't know. They talk about their plan to fuck up Se-young, which is to send all the information to the Yakuza and have them just fucking entirely erase Se-young with no trace. He also talks about not reliving those hellish 2 years again, despite it being made clear that they were basically just fucking around on vacation, which I guess is the point, you know, these kids are dickheads and they're dickheads. We've already established this. And if that's really his objective, why the fuck is he risking it by doing any of this? To his knowledge, Se-young is some shut-in on a rooftop who hasn't said anything to anyone for years, and he has no reason to believe this kid is coming after him or is even capable of it. They still have no idea he beat up all the mobsters they sent in at this point. Another bully shows up and says they'll have Se-young here by the hour, and we get another Power Rangers villain grin because every one of these characters is the exact same, most generic brand of evil you can imagine. So now the Yakuza show up, and it's their turn to grab Se-young. With how much they've been hyped up, how they're in a different league from normal mobsters, surely this'll be on Se-young beats them instantly, all of them. So of course we cut away to a Yakuza man explaining how those guys weren't just pros, but pros among pros. Se-young makes one of the pro among pro Yakuza dudes drive him to the secret bully lair after, for whatever reason, calling them to threaten them and let them know he's coming. Oh yeah, by the way, you know, pro among pro Yakuza guy beat him up a little bit and he's your bitch. The Yakuza man tries to warn the kids to get out of there, but of course because they are all one-dimensional Power Rangers villains, they have 3 settings: cartoonishly evil laughter, over-the-top rage at minor inconveniences, and pathetic groveling upon defeat. Soo-hyun tells him to eat shit and Se-young arrives. Oh, by the way, he fucking ripped the roof off the car so it would fit him. Just a quick power scaling update. The bullies split up so he can't get all of them, and Chang-soo ends up being the one who gets caught. The police show up to try and talk Se-young down from holding Chang-soo hostage, and he begins giving a speech while Chang-soo grovels as pathetically as possible because he's a cartoon villain. We get a quick introduction to Aegis Security, the largest security service in the world, who, of course, is run by the father of Chang-soo. Se-young tells the police he has no demands and wants no negotiations, and simply announces that he's going to kill all 8 of his bullies, their parents, and their siblings personally. He tells them to call the police, the military, and everyone in their power, because it won't matter, he's still going to kill them and their entire families. Now, you're probably starting to see what I mean when I say this comic is a school shooter power fantasy. After this speech Se-young gives, there's really only 2 ways to think about it. The first is, okay, hang on. These kids are real bastards and their parents seem pretty fucking undeniably evil too, but they might have some family members who are innocent. Surely the series will explore the flaw in Se-young's logic and how blinded by revenge he's become to say something so awful. And you'd be fucking wrong. Because for the entire rest of this 102 chapter series, Se-young does exactly what he said, and if there were any question that he wasn't justified in it, the fucking plot twists and makes sure to show you that every single fucking person Se-young wants to kill is the most cartoonishly evil scumbag you can imagine.
Well, a big muscle-bound nerd.
Huh, just more of you to pick on.
The geek shall inherit the earth.
Because Rooftop Swordmaster doesn't want you to think, hey, maybe murdering the entire families and everyone even tangentially related to my enemies is wrong. It just wants you to think, fuck yeah, Se-young, kill them all. Kill the women and children too. Murder the police who have no idea what's going on. Burn the family pets. It presents all of this as not just justified, but as justice itself. That not only is Se-young not in the wrong for doing this, but he is a fucking hero and a role model that you at home should want to be like him and brutally murder all of your enemies and everyone they love, and that you should bask in their cries for help as they burn alive, because it is the right thing to do. You might have noticed I've stopped talking about the plot directly, that I've stopped bringing you on a journey through the story as it progresses. That's because the entire rest of the fucking series from this point on is the same thing, over and over. ramping up more and more extreme. Se-young kills Chang-su as he begs for his life. The bullies send more goons after him while laughing maniacally. He kills those goons with no effort and then finds the bully. They cry and piss their pants and beg for their life as he kills them. Then the bullies send the army after him while laughing maniacally. He shrugs off missiles and bullets and rips tanks apart and then burns the bully alive while his mother watches. The bullies send elite martial artists after him while laughing maniacally. Can you guess what fucking happens? It's like Bleach. The exact same fucking thing just keeps happening over and over. Just ramped up stakes. But the ramped up of stakes don't even fucking matter because Se-young is literally a god. He is Saitama. The series is One Punch Man without any of the self-awareness. He tanks missiles, he rips apart buildings, he moves faster than bullets, he gets fucking encased in tons of concrete, an especially made super science containment unit. And he just fucking screams and breaks out of it instantly. Nothing they try is ever even slightly effective. Se-young is never challenged in the slightest. He's just flying around the Minecraft server of this world in creative mode, dumping lava buckets on people, and you're supposed to cheer for him. And somehow, every single time, they think they've got him. They do their cartoon villain laugh every single time, so you know they're totally super evil. And then they cry and beg when he gets to them because God fucking forbid a single one of these guys be anything other than the most pathetic scumbag possible. Because then, Se-young's mission to kill them and their entire families and anyone who gets in his way might actually be a little bit questionable, and we can't have that. Se-young is a warrior of justice, and if you disagree, well, you're just a scumbag bully who deserves to be put down with the rest of them. I said before that I'm fine with violence for the sake of violence, but that isn't what this is. John Wick is a movie that is pretty much just violence for the sake of violence. The plot can be summarized by mobsters kill Hitman's dog, Hitman kills them all. But in John Wick, he's actually challenged, not just physically but morally as well. He tried to leave a life of a hitman behind, but was broken by the world until he didn't care anymore. He isn't just Hulk smashing through the Mafia's HQ and killing them instantly with a flick of his wrist. He's putting his own life in danger to get his revenge, because he believes he has nothing left to live for. That innate sense of danger is what gives the story its life. If John Wick were instead about him gaining Superman powers and then easily decimating every single member of the Mafia, all without ever even questioning what gives him the right or what that amount of power does to him, it would be fucking awful. John Wick is not constantly twisting its world around and making its antagonists say the most over-the-top, corny, evil shit possible at all times. It lets its antagonists be characters. It lets them have legitimate motivations. It lets John Wick be flawed. It lets its audience decide for themselves if John is even justified in his actions or not. John Wick doesn't need you to think John is a role model or a hero for its story to work. It just needs you to want to see him fuck shit up. Every antagonist in Rooftop Swordmaster has the exact same personality because it needs all of its antagonists to be these uninteresting caricatures of pure evil in order to act like its protagonist is still the good guy while he burns a 17-year-old alive and makes his parents watch. And ironically, it's this vain attempt to make its protagonist and its story seem morally just that makes the series itself so morally disgusting. The fact that it is so unwilling to explore that Se-young's bullies might be more than just caricatures of pure evil assholes, or that they could have the capacity to change, or that despite being bad people, they might have good people who genuinely love them, shows the authors and the fans thinking towards these things. The people they consider their enemies, their bullies, no longer qualify as people. They are not capable of genuine joy, not capable or worthy of sympathy. No one loves them, or if anyone does, they're just as evil and rotten as the bully themselves and need to be taken out. I'm not trying to justify bullying at all, or trying to promote a turn-the-other-cheek philosophy here. I personally think the best way to deal with a bully is to knock them the fuck out if you're capable. But this one-dimensional view full of hatred and contempt just isn't fucking real, and it permeates so hard through the entire thing that it seems impossible to me that you would genuinely enjoy Rooftop Swordmaster without agreeing with this message. Se-young never gets challenged, so you can't be reading to see him overcome anything. He never changes or grows as a character, he just keeps doing the exact same goal the whole time, killing absolutely everyone in his way with no effort. The only way you can enjoy nearly 100 chapters of a guy god moding through every enemy sent his way is if you agreed with him and thought, yes, this is right. He should keep winning forever, he should kill them all. Se-young kills hundreds, probably thousands of people throughout the series, from his bullies to their families to mobsters to random soldiers who thought they were doing a good thing, protecting a crying, pleading child from a literal monster, and never once does a story ever attempt to even question if this is wrong. You can't be reading for the action either because there really is none. Madness Combat is a series famous for being about basically nothing but constant over-the-top violent action. The closest thing to a story it really has is that Hank wants to kill the sheriff or Tricky or the other or whoever the current bad guy is. Endless amounts of goons are put in his way and he slaughters just about all of them. Madness Combat also never stops to question if Hank is in the wrong. But it never tries to claim he's in the right either, because it really doesn't matter. It's about the action. It's about watching Hank gun down and chop through as many faceless bodies as possible. In Rooftop Swordmaster, Se-young just one-shots everything that's sent at him. There's no action to enjoy, because he immediately resolves any physical confrontation so that we can get back to the story, which is his 8 bullies either laughing maniacally or crying hysterically as he kills them one by one with no effort whatsoever. Madness Combat would not be a fun, phenomenal web series if every episode just consisted of Hank telling you who he was going to kill, having them mock him while saying a bunch of evil shit, followed by Hank shooting them in the head while they begged for their life. It would just be a psychotic power fantasy. And that's what Rooftop Swordmaster is. A psychotic power fantasy that tells you, hey, be like your hero Se-young. Kill fucking everyone who's your enemy. They're all evil. They have everyone on their side. They're all out to get you. They're all evil and they all need to die. And anyone who gets in your way needs to die too. I think the most blatant proof of this kind of thinking is Da-hun. Da-hun is the last bully to die, and up until the point where he dies, we've seen basically nothing of him, but can safely assume he's basically the exact same as the other bullies have all been, because we know the author's going to make him the exact same as all the other bullies, so we root against him. But what's special about Da-hun is, seemingly unknowingly to even the author himself, Da-hun is braver than Se-young by miles. Da-hun, despite all the flaws forced upon him so that Se-young can be justified in killing him, is unintentionally more of a badass than Se-young will ever be. Like I said before, Da-hun is the last of the bullies to die, meaning he has seen the absolute unchallengeable godly power of Se-young more than anyone else. He knows Se-young is coming for him and will stop at nothing and cannot be stopped. And of course, Se-young does reach him, thanks to the Prime Minister using him as bait for a trap that will of course ultimately fail. But what's important here is how Da-hun spends his last moments. First off, he begins banging on the walls of his container and asking to see his father. This is obviously meant to just make him look like a pathetic crybaby, but ironically makes him more respectable. With the knowledge that Homelander with a sword is after him, this kid is refusing the top-level protection of a secret government facility in favor of spending his last moments with his family. Of course he doesn't get that. Se-young shows up and begins to brutally beat him to death, crushing his entire arm under his foot. And what does my man Da-hun do? A 17-year-old with broken ribs and a crushed arm, a normal human with no weapons, up against a superhuman monster demigod with supernatural weaponry from the heavens. All hope is gone, all his friends are dead, he's the last man standing. And what does my man Da-hun do? He gets up and he fucking swings!
I'm too real, I'm too skilled, so I see why they hate on me. See me in person, ain't got shit to say to me. This in my soul, they can never relate to me. I've been with #1, isn't God great to me? I know he got me, you ain't gotta pray for me. I'm the rap god, all you rappers should pray to me. This ain't just rap, nigga, you must mistaken me. I dare you niggas to try to come play with me. Moving with Nina, I promise she stay with me. Right on my lap, nigga, don't she look great on me? Straps in my crib, so if you find a way in, I might get the Nicky, I might get the Drake with me.
Up against insurmountable odds, literally fighting the author himself, Da-hun spits in the face of the Chosen One as he's being strangled to death. Don't let my hyping up of this scenario fool you. The reason I love this moment so much is because the author wants you to go against Da-hun. This was not meant to be a cool moment for Da-hun. The author made sure to draw him crying and shitting his pants the moment Se-young shows up, and made sure to make him look as pathetic as possible before he died. All of that was just meant to show you, look, Da-hun still attacking poor Se-young, even as he's about to die. Even as he's about to die, he's spitting on him. He doesn't feel bad at all. He's such a jerk. But it ironically does the exact opposite, or at least it does for me. Unintentionally, the author has recreated Moomin Rider versus Deep Sea King, and expected you to side with the Deep Sea King. Da-hun had even less of a chance of victory, and still he fought, still he spat in the face of his enemy. That is something worthy of respect, regardless of what kind of person he was. But the author is so blinded by his hate boner for bullies that he can't even see this. All he can see is that Da-hun is a bad guy, and therefore deserves no respect and should be made to suffer as much as possible and be made to look as pathetic as possible. And it's so fucking sad. Because I think this is the only time I can think of where a character beats the author. The author wants you to think of Da-hun in this awful, despicable way. He wants you to hate him, and you can't because he unintentionally made him kind of a badass. And even ignoring the moral point of all of this, doing this fucking thing where you just make every enemy in your series so pathetically pathetic just makes people ultimately have to root for them. How long can I want to see Se-young trampling on ants just because the ants tell him to fuck himself? How long before I want the ant to stand up and whoop Se-young's ass? I'll tell you how long. About one bully in. About one bully in, I was already fucking tired of this and wanted Se-young to get knocked the fuck out. There's actually one point, exactly 1 point in the series where it almost realizes what it's done, where it almost dares to hint at the question of whether Se-young is in the wrong or not. There's a point where Se-young is straight up threatening to make all of Korea his enemy if they don't give him the grandpa of one of the bullies. And he destroys all the bridges out of the city after he deflects a bunch of missiles, killing dozens of completely innocent bystanders without any remorse. He single-handedly causes the whole city to erupt in riots, and at one point goes to step in when a man is being beaten by a mob. The mob then greets him welcomingly, saying he's their hero, and comparing his treatment of being beaten with no one to help to their own treatment, thanking him for showing them the way, and allowing them the chance to get revenge on their own bullies. And now Se-young has a problem with this, but he's lost for words and has no argument to really defend himself. Because he can't. Because what he's been doing for the last 50 chapters is wrong. But the story keeps bending over backwards to try and make it right. And what does Se-young do now that he's been cornered with this reality? Well, fucking nothing. Some guy shows up to fight him for just about no reason at all, and he never has to think about it again. It's never brought up again. Se-young just goes right back to killing the families of all his bullies and anyone who dares to not immediately comply with his demands. There's a point where the series starts trying to claim, oh, well it's not Se-young's fault, they all got in his way, they all tried to kill him, they attacked first. Which first of all is not a fucking actual argument since he is Superman and no one is an actual threat to him, but it's also just straight up fucking wrong. Very early on, the president's daughter is so terrified by Se-young that she has curled up under her blanket and is too afraid to move, so the Secret Service picks her up and tries to carry her to safety as Se-young begins tearing through the building. Se-young kills an unarmed agent who is doing nothing other than attempting to carry a crying, terrified child to safety at the risk of his own life. This man died for the unforgivable crime of not abandoning his duty, his job, and his humanity to immediately kiss Se-young's ass and give him what he wanted. This is your big hero. A superhuman demigod whose only motivation is murdering anyone who wrongs him, who kills anyone that inconveniences him, who destroys important infrastructure and puts innocent people in danger for his own goals, who threatens weaker people into obeying him for basically no reason and kills them if they don't. Someone who, while doing all of this, tells other people they shouldn't because it would be wrong if they did it. Someone who is only doing all of this because he now has the unrivaled power to do so, which he received by pure chance. Se-young is only on this killing spree because his own life is no longer in any danger whatsoever thanks to the powers of the sword. He's only now doing this because he is utterly invincible.
I'm the bad guy?
Yeah.
Let's get a big fucking round of applause for the good guy. Even if you don't agree that this series is inherently manipulative and disgusting in how it presents its ideas and themes, I think we can all agree that repeatedly making a character act as overtly evil and scummy as possible just so your audience enjoys their death is about as satisfying as watching someone set up exactly one domino and then knock it over. You can't just make every single character in your story Joffrey and then kill them almost immediately. Joffrey's death is so satisfying to people because even among a cast of assholes, he stood out as the worst of them all. He didn't just try to do bad things and then immediately fail and get killed. He kept doing bad things, he kept succeeding, and kept getting away with it. If the first time we saw Joffrey he was kicking a puppy, turned to Jon Snow and said, "Daddy, Daddy, I hate this stupid simpleton, have his penis exploded immediately," and then Jon Snow just killed his guards and cut his head off, no one would care. It would just be a weird power fantasy about killing some kid you made up in your mind to be as annoying as possible. It's like if they tried to make Jigsaw the good guy by making every single one of his victims the most vilely irredeemable scumbag possible, instead of having them be actual characters. And if you're able to enjoy that on repeat over and over for 100 chapters, I feel confident in saying there's something wrong with you and you're a bad person. And if you don't believe me, let's read what some of the fans have to say about this manhwa.
just hit the wall. She's always had it all. 2 Prozacs a day, dad's a CPA. Dreams went out the door, she turned 24. She's been with 30 men, 3 were only friends. She was gonna be an actress, have her own TV show. You can see her shake her ass in a rap music video. Her yellow STDs is now the enemy. Looks at her average life, nothing has been alright. The Beach Boys and Doo-Wop, waiting for hip-hop, it was out there. And the roots, driving down the shoes, the consumers in high school. They tell me that I'm uncool, 'cause I'm still preoccupied with 1965.
Wow, aren't these fucking pleasant? While they're going, I figured I'd ramble off some things I left out about the series that weren't relevant. For the latter 40 chapters of Rooftop Swordmaster, everything that isn't Sejong killing the families of his bullies is basically other nonsense that would just distract from the main focus of the video. But if you're interested, here's some quick facts. We never learn where the sword came from or why. We never learn anything about the stranger Sejong saw in his visions, except that he was maybe holding back some demonic entity called Ereb that took control of him. We never learn anything else about Ereb. Sejong wasn't the only kid getting beat up by his bullies that day. He was actually protecting his love interest, who was hidden from us for about 30 to 40 chapters, and when we finally meet her, she's a crazy yandere GF who wants to kill all the bullies just as much as him. But he doesn't like that because only he's allowed to do that. Also, she's part of some confusing shadow organization that wants to get rid of the current Korean regime, but not the way Sejong's doing it, except sometimes they do want Sejong to take them out. It makes no sense. This entire fucking series was just a prologue for The Irregular Squad, which is the author's own little Avengers crossover multiverse. Who else is in the Irregular Squad? No one fucking knows, because for 92 chapters, all we knew about it was this image at the end of each chapter, which gave so little info, everyone assumed the Irregular Squad was the translation team working on the series. In fact, we never even see Sejong joining or even hearing about this Irregular Squad. There was another superhuman Korean man before Sejong called Maruchi, who allegedly was killed via the same super science concrete trap they tried to use on Sejong, except he's not dead and also hasn't aged because, I don't know. For whatever reason, after releasing the final chapter, the author later came back unannounced and started continuing Rooftop Swordmaster in a fantasy setting that makes even less sense than the original series, but at least isn't focused on killing the families of all your bullies. Probably, I don't know, I'm not reading it. South Korea developed some superdrug that randomly shows up near the end of the series and turns agents into superhuman zombies. This affects literally nothing, it just happens so Sejong can beat up people who are stronger than normal people. Some scientists analyzed the cooked flesh of the kid Sejong burned alive and confirmed that his magical sword flames are in fact magical, and have a big nervous moment where they talk about how they need to get Sejong's sword. They never show up again and no one ever attempts to take his sword. This happens for absolutely no reason. There's a plotline where the American government is trying to get Sejong on their side and does so by protecting his aunt from kidnappers and offering him superficial help with finding his bullies. Nothing comes of this. At the end of the series he just says no and that's it. There's way more, but talking about all the stupid nonsensical shit and forgotten plot lines would honestly be enough material for its own entire video, and I don't really care to do that. Thanks for watching. Remember to smash that like button, hit that bell, and support me on— Nah, I'm just fucking with you. The video's over.